When was the last time you were scared out of your wits by a movie? Halloween, the motion picture about the most terrifying night of the year. Halloween, the night three teenage girls discover the real trick is to stay alive.
Tommy, it's me!
Halloween, the night he came home. From Compass International Pictures, rated R.
Hello, welcome back to Desperate Living Reviews. Now, discussing John Carpenter's 1978 film Halloween is in many ways a rather pointless exercise. I mean, are there really people who haven't seen the film at least once? And unlike with certain other classic titles, I'm not going to go out on a limb with a contrary opinion about this movie. Halloween remains a near-perfect horror film. A movie that set the template for the modern genre in a way that few other movies have, and even now remains a classic example of the genre. In fact, seen now, Halloween seems even more a perfect example of scares and tension than ever, thanks to the endless series of ever more pointless sequels, reboots and reinventions, especially those that have tried to expand the story and characters or make unnecessary stabs at social commentary that immediately dates the narrative. Add to those the countless imitations that emerged in the 1980s and beyond, and you might reasonably expect that the film's thrills have been diluted by over-familiarity. But if anything, all these other films have done is make the original seem even more impressive. A no-nonsense, stripped-down horror movie that has no pretensions and simply gets on with the job of scaring the living daylights out of the audience with admirable skill. Carpenter's film works brilliantly because it doesn't try too hard to make sense or develop its plot, something that would bog down the second film in the series and has made the more recent revival near unwatchable. In this film, Michael Myers is a little kid who hacks his sister to death on Halloween night and then, as an adult, escapes from his mental hospital and returns to his hometown of Haddonfield, a classic American small town of picket fences and white houses, to pick off several victims who are at once completely random and very specific. He's chased by psychiatrist Donald Pleasance, who does a great line in Warnings of Apocalyptic Evil, and in the end it turns out that yes, Michael really is something more than human, the embodiment of evil, the bogeyman. Notably, he has no reason for his killing spree other than simply to kill. This is to the film's credit. Why do we need explanations or motivations? Let's just get on with the job of terrifying people. Now, if you feel inclined to pick at the film, then of course a lot of the narrative makes very little sense. The film itself acknowledges the anomaly of a man who's been institutionalized since childhood being able to drive, and the sense that he's somehow specifically stalking Jamie Lee Curtis's Laurie Strode and her friends only really makes sense within the context of the first sequel, where she is unnecessarily revealed as his sister. Carpenter's own version of the equally clumsy ongoing family revelations of the Star Wars films that the original Halloween series was concurrent with. Unlike with Star Wars, where the assorted revelations feel like desperate grasping, the family connection between Laurie and Michael does actually give a new logic to the scenes in the first movie where he's obsessively stalking her in particular. But as Carpenter admitted, that certainly wasn't the plan at the time. So why Michael Myers picks off three best friends in different houses across the small town is entirely illogical, other than the fact that it works within the context of the film. But that's the movie's strength, because not only do you not think about these plot holes, but the film never attempts to fill them in, and so can't be pulled up by digging itself into ever bigger holes. The obsession with horror films today is to give the often one-dimensional characters entirely unnecessary and unconvincing backstories, but Halloween doesn't waste time on any of that because it doesn't have to. If the audience is worried about plot holes or backstory in a film, it's because the film hasn't grabbed them by the throat and pulled them screaming into the alternative universe that the film takes place in. But Halloween is so relentlessly creepy and then such a roller coaster of scares that it gives us no time to think about anything else until much later. And by then it doesn't matter. We meet Laurie, Annie, played by Nancy Loomis, and Linda, played by PJ Soles, without any context other than these are three teenage friends. Annie and Linda, the more promiscuous of the three by virtue of having boyfriends that they sleep with, something that would see the film attacked by some critics as introducing the idea of women being punished for being sexually active. There's a slight point to those arguments in this film, more so than in later slasher movies like Friday the 13th, where Contrary to popular belief, the victims are pretty evenly split between men and women, but that doesn't really hold up when you consider that the allegedly virginal Laurie is hardly let off lightly. She might survive, and certainly becomes the template for the final girl as she develops as a trope in the 1980s and beyond, but that's not for the want of trying on behalf of Michael. I'm pretty certain that Carpenter wasn't making any moral judgment on sexually active teenagers so much as setting up a classic heroine, quiet, sympathetic, already possibly a bit of a misfit, for the audience to root for. And interestingly, all the girls feel very real, thanks to natural performances, decent dialogue, and allowing the characters to all be pretty likeable. Pay attention, modern filmmakers. These three not only feel more human than many of the more developed characters in later films, but you also feel more of a sense of shock and sadness when they're killed. In essence, the slight, paper-thin, back-of-a-napkin storyline is what makes Halloween work so effectively. Carpenter strips the film of any pretense, trims away the fat, and cuts straight to the chase. This is pure spook show thrills, building tension and atmosphere, and unleashing a monster who's frightening because he's so unknown. In fact, I'd say the scene at the end of the film where his mask is briefly pulled off to reveal a deformed face. Again, why? He looked totally normal as a kid. It's the only mistake because, really, we just need to see the infamous white-faced William Shatner mask as the genuine face of Michael, or the Shape as he became known. He doesn't need to be human at all. He's a killing machine, as dead-eyed and cold and inhuman as the shark in Jaws. This is where Rob Zombie's remake, of course, upset so many fans, with its backstory that humanises the killer, though much of Zombie's story in fact came from the Halloween novelisation, which extended the story considerably, although Zombie's film is stripped of the novel's supernatural hints. Turning Michael into a human psycho is a mistake. He is the Shape, a figure of pure malevolence who can't be killed. That's why this film works, because it presents somebody who has become more than human, the very personification of evil. And it doesn't for a moment bother to explain why or how that happened. By stripping the film down so purely to nothing but fear, Carpenter makes Halloween one of the most essential horror movies ever made. But doing so successfully takes a lot of skill, and this is a masterclass in terror cinema. Carpenter's direction allows the scenes to develop slowly, the creepiness to build organically, and the shocks to be introduced exactly at the right time. His slowly moving camera and his exceptional soundtrack, one of the most iconic and perfect horror film scores ever recorded, bolstered by well-chosen rock tracks like Blue Oyster Cult's Don't Fear the Reaper, it makes every scene feel as though there is something slightly off even when nothing's happening. By allowing Michael to appear as a figure in the background for the first half of the film, half seen by Laurie and the audience, he builds this sense of dread long before anything actually happens. That these scenes still work after God knows how many viewings of the film, as well as the slew of mostly terrible sequels and decades worth of imitations and tributes, not to mention the inevitable degradation of Michael as a scary figure through endless satires, cosplay costumes and toy lines featuring the character. It's a testament to how brilliant this movie is, that it still works. Halloween remains a tense, gripping and scary exercise even when you know exactly what is about to happen, even when you've seen it many times. While the element of surprise is gone, we can still admire the potency of those scenes, and in anticipating those shocks we can now revel in their audacity and skill. Repeated viewings act as a reminder of just how good the film is, a masterclass in horror filmmaking, indeed filmmaking full stop, that definitively proves that both less is more and more is never enough when it comes to scaring the wits out of the audience. It's hard not to think that it's all been downhill for the genre since this point. If you enjoy this kind of film criticism, then be sure to like, subscribe, share, and let me know in the comments, what do you think of Halloween, its various sequels, its various imitators? Is the best the first? Or do the sequels that I've been fairly dismissive of actually have their own merits? Fascinated to hear your opinions. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again soon.